push that button and start recording. Are you high? Are you really high? This is my high, it's not just me.
So this is take 2 on this episode because we just like started for 15 minutes and it was 15 minutes off.
We drifted off completely.
We drifted off completely.
Yeah. And I spilled tea. Shit.
Yeah.
But
So
we can still use that reel.
I guess.
So really nice intro. This is going to be the shortest intro ever.
Welcome to the That Slate podcast. We're your hosts, Phil and Romain.
And today we're talking about lenses.
Shit.
And
how far in are we?
50 seconds.
God damn.
We're talking about
Swiss
lenses
efficiency.
and the factors that go into deciding what lens to use on what shoot.
Exactly.
Full stop.
Full stop.
Now music.
Is it is there a theme? Is it?
Yeah, that's Indiana Jones.
Oh, shit.
We licensed the Indiana Jones. I don't know.
So yeah, as Phil said, lenses.
Gear.
Lenses, aside from lighting, is probably the things that affect the most the image. You can convey a lot of emotions, a lot of what you want to say through lenses, through the different format of lenses, through the different focal length, of course, but also the different characteristics of the lenses. And today we just want to go through some of the characteristics we usually look at when we pick lenses for projects, because not all projects are made equal.
And, what characteristics there are?
Yeah.
What factors go into that?
Exactly.
And how long did it take you to realize that lenses are actually like, you already know where I'm going. I'm just going to finish the question. But think about your answer. That lenses actually make the image. That lenses actually like make your image look the way it does, and much less the camera. Of course, the camera is a factor, but it's much less.
I think a little bit because you have to be confronted.
This morning, yeah.
You have to like see so many images for you to like start to see differences between lenses. Because at first, if you like first start photography, for instance, and like you take a photo with this lens, and that lens, it kind of looks the same.
That's with everything though. Also, color shifts and brightnesses and, styles and grain. And at the beginning, you're like, you're not even paying attention. But if you know it's there, then...
Exactly. If you know it's there, you'll notice. And that's when you can make decisions as to what you want to use. But also, I feel like those characteristics, and talking about, we talked about cameras, lenses and stuff, even though people don't really notice it, like they can't pinpoint like what they feel like about a certain image they see, this will affect the perception of the viewer regarding like what you're filming or what you're shooting. And this is not to be underestimated. So Phil is monitoring the audio right now, so that's why he's moving the mics around. But so I think it's really important to get like educated. It's there's no shortcuts to like understanding what lenses do. I think it's just like being exposed to as many images as possible.
The longer you do it.
And also, it's basically like the longer you do it, the easier it's gonna get for you.
That was a really long answer.
Yeah.
Which didn't really answer my question.
What was the initial question?
Ask again.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to realize that?
Pretty like a couple of years, to be fair. Yeah.
So, like,
and looking at images and like being like aware of that I was trying to like see the differences. Mm-hmm. Maybe like the obvious ones, I think when we look at anamorphic versus spherical, for instance, the obvious ones I think you can see pretty fast. But if you compare to,
I even doubt that as like a outside person not working in this.
No, but I mean like as a professional in this industry, I think like the most obvious one will like appear like a lot faster, like anamorphic versus spherical, or vintage versus like Sigma Cine, for instance, stuff like this. But I think the difference is between like similar lenses, I think they come a lot like further down the line, because like if you're just looking at how they flare, or how the highlights, like the fringes are like rendered and stuff like this, it takes a long time.
100%.
Yeah. And for you?
Same.
Yeah,
probably a couple of years.
It's a long journey.
And I think what also goes into that is that most people start a lot of people start with photography these days because it's really accessible. These digital cameras, just and photo lenses, the modern photo lenses are. I might get hated for that, but more or less the same. I mean, there's not that much difference. Like in the cine world where you have vintage lenses being used. Of course, in photography, you can do that too, but when you're starting out, you don't do that. You just have the lens that you get with your kit, like you said. Yeah. With your camera that you buy, or something that has autofocus and it's just clean and sharp. Yeah. So you can take your photos. Yeah. And they're all more or less the same. And I think that's why also people don't realize how important the lens is, because you just get a kit lens and maybe you realize it's not that sharp and you get a sharper one, but there's not much of that in the photo world. And I think only when you get into the film world and then get into it, cine lenses and what's used on films, then you realize, there's very much factors and characteristics going into that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think like if you look at
for me it was that way.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you look at like 24 to 70s, for instance, like all the known brands there are some differences, obviously, in terms of like color renditions.
They're more
like
technical.
I think they're more really artistic. Yeah, I think because like you want to have like the cleanest image possible.
You want the correct colors, sharpness, no aberration, no fringing,
no nothing. Yeah.
So
you want just a clean slate. Yeah. And I think like in photography, a lot of like the look of the image is going to come in post-production. Also because I think there are less people involved in the making of the images sometimes.
And it's much simpler.
And it's a lot simpler.
Edit a photo than a whole film.
I never thought of that, but that's true. Like photo lenses are like pretty vanilla most of the time. Unless you're like a film photographer and like you start using different lenses, but I think it's
even with digital you can use but then you're advanced and you're in an artistic space trying to find your
exactly. Yeah, I never thought of that. That's pretty interesting. So if we talk about like one of the if we look at lenses, the first thing that comes in mind when you have to pick one lens or the other is anamorphic and spherical. Like this is, I think, like often it's bypassed for like most projects because it goes like straight into spherical. But I think like anamorphic versus spherical, I think this is the easiest look.
Completely other format too.
Completely different formats.
Commenting on the style and the characteristic of the lens, but just the format. If you want a 16:9 image, then you're most not gonna shoot anamorphic, most likely.
So essentially, for the people listening, spherical is basically like the more common lenses
what you're
used to on a 16:9 sensor, like a photo camera or whatever. It will give you like the full sensor essentially. It's pretty clean. These are probably the cleanest lenses you can get. The cleanest lenses are probably spherical.
And most of them are,
and they're more affordable as well. And most of the lenses are. So chances are if you start off and you do like a lot of like run and gun and stuff, like you'll shoot spherical, and this is a no-brainer. You don't even have to think about it. When you get into more of the short film and film side of filmmaking, this is where I think, or even commercial to some extent, we'll talk about the shortcomings, but this is where you have to like really choose one or the other. Anamorphic will give you a wider field of view because essentially what it does, it squeezes a wider field of view into your sensor, and you have to de-squeeze in post-production, which gives you this like film look with the black bars on top of it. If you have to like summarize it. The cool thing is that it gives you like a wider field of view. For instance, a 50 would be like, if you have a 2x anamorphic, would be like a 25 field of view, so you can see more stuff horizontally, but the height would be 50, which is a good look. That means that like the corners and the edges are like most of the time a little fucked up, which is a good look. If you look at movies like the Batman, it's definitely a look.
Some people like it, some don't.
Yeah. And one of the other characteristics that's really prominent is like the bokeh. So like how the out of focus areas are responding to light, it's more oval. So instead of being spherical, like a round, it's more oval. This, I don't know for you, but for me, anamorphic is really only for commercials when I shoot, and some agencies are requesting anamorphic, but they don't realize that it's harder to do like 9:16 versions of like
I think
what you shoot
harder and harder because everyone wants these deliverables and formats for 9:16 and 1:1, and with anamorphic it doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. You could bypass that by shooting on like a really like high resolution sensor, like 6K or up, and you will have enough pixels to actually do like 9:16. It's just that the look is not gonna look good. Like
since the image is so stretched,
yeah,
cropping like a small part will look even worse than with 16:9.
Yeah,
most of the time that's my experience. And also, you know, if you have flares in there, then the flare kind of
it's overwhelming.
It's over the whole image because it just doesn't really work often.
Yeah, and that's my biggest.
And also small screens. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
small screens, which are, all of those screens are 16:9. Are already small, and then if you have even black bars, you crop in and you see even less. It just, even if you're watching it horizontally, it just, I don't know. Yeah,
I think it doesn't work. It's more catered towards when you shoot short films or like features, and it's gonna be shown on big screens or even on TVs and stuff, but not necessarily on like vertical screens. That's my biggest gripe, because I've seen a lot of like commercials recently like shot on anamorphic and then resized for like social stuff, and it looks terrible.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you seen big commercials do that?
Yeah, I've seen. I'm not gonna name any of like the ones I've seen.
It doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. It just looks really funky. So I would say, like, I don't know for you, like, do you shoot a lot anamorphic?
No, for that reason.
Yeah.
Because most of my clients, most of the stuff I do isn't, we need. I do it sometimes, but not as much as I'd love to.
Yeah. I wish I could shoot more anamorphic, but like it doesn't make sense for like this stuff thing to do. And if I had to choose only one kind of lenses though, I would definitely go spherical.
Of course.
Because it's not even for the 9:16 thing, but I think the look of it, I kind of like it more.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because I feel like the anamorphic look, if you look at really like the koas or like really messed up anamorphic, they look beautiful, but I don't think they don't fit all the projects. Whereas spherical, I think you can, even if you use vintage lenses, you can shoot basically everything with spherical, even if it's a little vintagey,
and you can still put some black bars on it and keep the format. Which is something a lot of people do, and people don't realize it. A lot of big films,
a lot of big films are shot spherical and have the black bars just to fit the widescreen aspect ratio.
They want the aspect ratio, but they don't want the characteristics of the anamorphic.
Exactly.
You can easily do that.
Yeah. Funnily enough, like there's this The Killer by Fincher was released, and I think it was shot on spherical, and they faked all the anamorphic characteristics in post-production.
Really?
All the flares and stuff. If I'm
What's your source? Are you sure?
No, I'm pretty sure. I'm 95% sure, because like I read this and I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
Do you know why you would do that? I mean,
most likely because I think most likely Fincher, it's probably like a lot of VFX and stuff, and it's like get the cleanest slate possible, and then
for the VFX that makes sense.
and then you mess it up because you want the look. But
because if you have these characteristics in your VFX plates, then that sucks.
Yeah, the VFX artists are not going to be like that happy.
That makes sense, yeah.
It does.
Because I was just like, why would you?
It's just funny though, because like.
But Fincher's a big fan of VFX stuff, huh?
He does that a lot.
Screens, blue screen, green screen,
and really nicely too.
Yeah.
I think like because you don't like really notice.
But it's not big stuff. It's just small stuff.
Replacement, like sky replacements, background.
To make the production easier. And it's not really like he needs to do it. You could get all that real. It's just much more of a hassle.
I think it's just a workflow thing.
Yeah.
And it's...
Style of working also.
Shoot a lot more, But he also shoots a lot on locations. It's just like he has big ass blue screens for like replacements and stuff. But yeah, this is cool.
So what other characteristics are there? We went into one... anamorphic versus spherical, but what else is there like that goes into deciding what lens to choose?
So we talked about anamorphic, and anamorphic is if you want to shoot anamorphic, you want to shoot.
I was going to say one thing about anamorphic. Do you know how anamorphic came up?
I have no idea.
You don't?
Do you know?
Oh, I do.
Tell me.
Tell that story. I don't know where I know from. I'm sure it's from the internet. So when you know how they used to shoot 4x3?
Yeah.
And a cinema was dying, kind of like it is still always. They have a problem with that. And they decided they wanted to make it different than what the people, because TVs were at home 4x3, you know, and they noticed that with TVs, people wouldn't come to the cinemas often because they have TVs at home. So they were like, we need to make something, you know, special about the cinema, so people have to come here to see that they can't get at home. So the widescreen or 16:9, they kind of decided they should do 16:9, but then they were like, okay, how are we gonna do that? Because they had all these films in 4x3, and I think they somehow stretched them, but anamorphic lenses were used on the projectors, not on the cameras.
Oh.
So they stretched that 4x3 image. Oh, yeah, I think that's how they did it. Because also films were 4x3, you know?
Yeah.
And they stretched that on the screen so that it would be special there. I don't know how they did it with the stretching factor.
Yeah.
I don't know if they used it then already for the cameras. Probably they'd have to do that. They'd have to stretch.
That's what anamorphic is.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But they used it for that reason.
I'm not sure
if I'm...
Don't quote me on this. This is super random. My Fincher anecdote is like a lot
more sure.
Sure than this.
Yeah, I'm not a 95% sure about this, but
that would make sense. That would make sense.
They'd had to squeeze it when shooting already.
Okay.
Because if you squeeze it just by
that would make sense.
Showing it, then it'd be stretched.
Yeah, that would make sense to wanna separate yourself from like the TV you have at home.
I know that's the reason they came up with anamorphic. I'm not 100% sure if they shot it anamorphic and then stretched it as well, because I think you'd have to do that.
That's pretty cool. That's cool.
But that's how it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cinema to revive cinema.
That would make sense. And that's funny because like now with you know being able to shoot up and gate on like cameras and like 4x3 as well, like there is like a lot of people shooting 4x3 now, kind of like going back to like
doing the same thing. Yeah.
The same thing but backwards, sort of, you know. Like starting to shoot 4x3 and like delivering in 4x3 just to have this like, you know, old school look.
Not using anamorphic lenses. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
It's a cycle.
A full circle.
Yeah. So yeah, you were saying like what other
characteristics?
So when you go down the funnel of like picking your lens, you have lots of anamorphic or spherical, and then you go down. And then when you go down, I think in terms of look, you have to decide if you need something really clean looking or something a little bit more with a little bit more texture. Like people say the word organic a lot. Some people say vintage look. I think this is like another decision you have to make. Clinical doesn't mean it look bad. It just looks like everything is really sharp. There's no distortion. Everything looks as clean as possible. And vintage means you use older lenses that have a lot more funk to it, maybe a little bit of, you know, chromatic aberration, a little bit of, you know, funny bokeh, like the Helios, very swirly. The look is very much more prominent with the vintage lenses, and I think that's why a lot of people like to use those vintage lenses now, to get some of this anamorphic funk somehow, but with like a spherical.
I mean, look is basically always an imperfection.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a look, it's the way you see with your eyes, and that's just clean, sharp.
Yeah.
For most people, I guess. I mean,
I have glasses.
You have, you know, you can have bad eyes, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's always imperfections, and naturally with older lenses that weren't as good as they are today, and are old and used and get bad as they get used, you know.
And I think like
they get these characteristics.
The lenses, the market for vintage lenses has boomed.
Absolutely.
The last few years. And
absolutely.
That's something I'm kind of sad about, is like I feel like we could have gotten like really good deals, like maybe even 5 years back.
Yeah.
On like lenses.
But I think it's going down now, no?
Yeah, it is.
Especially with the cheaper ones.
Yeah.
I mean, the Canon FDs are very famous for exploding in price.
Yeah. Leicas as well.
Like
ours. contacts.
And I mean, I know for the FDs they kind of came down because it just kind of wore off. Yeah, and they are very accessible. There's a lot of them out there, so
that's the thing, scarcity. Because Canon FDs, I think they produced a lot of them.
Yeah, it was like a standard lens.
Yeah. So yeah, the second thing on the funnel is like basically choosing, do you want a really clean image?
What's your look?
Yeah. So when would you use like a modern clinical lens? What kind of projects will you use that on?
It really depends what the client wants, what's expected.
But if you had to give categories in terms of like,
I mean, probably corporate would be the most clean.
Exactly.
Mostly. But there's not rules. You could
shoot very nice anamorphic stuff. Like corporate anamorphic.
But I'd say the biggest part of corporate stuff is clean, and then also documentaries. You know, the classic documentaries are very clean and very sharp and very. These days, I think it's kind of changing. I mean, it's been changing a lot already, but I think a lot of people are using also vintage lenses for documentaries, just because I think people get used to that look and to, just because it's pretty. And people kind of expect that, a pretty image from anything.
Yeah.
You can tell that the youth or younger people, also, I mean, my generation already, yours too, are much more sensitive to that.
Sensitive.
To like imagery and to beautiful images, because it's just out there and we're on these phones all the time and get, these images. So people kind of expect it. If you have a very, I mean, documentaries used to be kind of boring looking. There wasn't a lot effort going into the image and, coloring and characteristics. And these days, documentaries are much more.
Yeah. I think there's a sense of nostalgia, I think, going into this. As in, not because you were born when the lenses were there, but I think, like a lot of people now are trying to like mimic film in terms of like color grading, but also we talked about the format, shooting 4x3 and stuff like this. And also I think the vintage lenses give you like a really distinctive difference between this and like what you shoot on your phone or like a cheap DSLR, stuff like this.
It makes it cinematic.
It makes it like because everything is a little softer, a little bit more dreamy,
and that's what films we're used to looking at look like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so vintage lenses, obviously there are tons of different ones. The most common ones are FDs. You have a set of FD that you just finished. Leica R's are like common contact size, and I think now a lot of people are looking into medium format lenses, just because like the sensors are getting so much, like everybody shoots full frame now, so you can go step up and go like 70 mil, like IMAX, so the Mamiyas and stuff. But what's because I think vintage lenses look good, but what are the downside of using vintage photo lenses for video production?
Yeah, the whole handling.
Yeah,
the whole handling is much different because, of course, you have to just take more care of them. You can't just, treat them like a new set of modern cine lenses, because they're much more robust and they're built. Not that the vintage lenses are not built to last. I think they built them very well. Thank you, but they're just older and smaller and. Have usually just worn down already, the gears, the screws and everything. So you have to take more care of them. Also because you can't just repair them. It's not as easy as with modern lenses. You just send them back to the manufacturer and they'll help you out. So yeah, that definitely is a part. And then also just handling them, because a lot of vintage lenses are actually not for cinema. They're photo lenses, and you have to mod them or rehouse them to be able to use them for cinema with gears, with the standard front diameters for filters and matte boxes, and also with mounts. They have mounts that are not existing anymore on today's cinema cameras. You have to adapt them or put another mount on them. There's good companies that make mounts specifically for vintage lenses, so you can exchange them. That's what I just did that's what you did too.
Yeah.
With the
contacts.
Yeah. Set. which is really good, but it's always flimsy. It might be not perfect. It might be a bit wiggly, and especially with adapters. So, handling them and being out and wanting to be fast and having an AC just throw them on, it's just not as quick and not as easy as modern cine lenses. Yeah.
Yeah. I think.
What else?
Well, I think you listed everything. If for people to understand, I think you have to look at like cine-modded lenses. So lenses, as Phil just described, that you take photo lenses, you change the mount, so it's sturdy. You put gear for follow focus, and you put a standard front, so you can clip on matte box on like filters and stuff. They're great, and I think some companies, as you said, are doing great stuff, but they're still never full on cine lenses. And what I'm saying with like full on cine lenses is like when you buy cine lenses in a set or like you rent them, first of all, the gear is on the mount. It's not like something you stuck on the mount, so there's no drifting, there's no when you pull with the motor, the focus gear doesn't turn around. We had that on a shoot together. You remember that with the contacts? We were trying to pull focus, and like
the gear was turning.
The gear was turning, but not the
because it's DIY. It's DIY. I think.
Yeah, it's DIY kind of
from the manufacturer. Yeah.
And one thing I think that saves a lot of time on set is that when you buy a proper set of cine lenses, the size is similar. The length is somewhat similar, but also the focus gear placement is the same on all lenses. That means that when you have to swap lenses, or when you first see swapping lenses, you just have to take it out, put another one back in, and the focus motor doesn't have to be moved. Whereas with photo lenses that you modify, when the manufacturer made them in the first place, they didn't really think about like people having to pull focus. So they like the size, the length is changing. Didn't matter. So when you have to swap lenses on a set with cine-modded lenses, it takes more time just because you have to recalibrate, because the focus throw is different. You have to like move the focus motor, and you have to do all those things that just add up in terms of like how much time it takes to like change lenses on set.
And also, sorry,
you
were going to say something. It just came to my mind that also the sets are most likely not gonna match that well.
Yeah,
because mostly your vintage lenses you're gonna buy one by one. You're gonna find different ones and try them, and you can't just buy a set, expect when somebody else already built that set and did the job for you, and you built the whole set from the person. Otherwise, you're just gonna have to buy all of them individually and build your own set, and they're not all gonna match perfectly
in terms of colors
and also characteristics. Some might be softer than others because the glass is not in the perfect place anymore. Maybe the glass has some scratches or some dust or stuff like that, more than others, because if you buy a new set, they're gonna be perfect. They're gonna be matching as good as they can get.
Yeah,
and but also that can be a problem too.
Also the exposure, because the way photo lenses are measured in terms of exposure. They're measured in f-stop, which is the theoretical light that's coming in the lens, whereas cine lenses, they're measured in t-stop, which is the actual light that's coming through all the elements of the lens. So having a f1.4 lens at the back of the lens.
If you have the lens, f-stop is what comes in at the beginning,
yeah,
and t-stop is what comes out at the very end, when it hits the sensor.
Exactly.
Or the film plane.
And that's what's most important, because if you have like an f1.4 35 and f1.4 50, wide open, there might be some change in terms of like how much light is coming in, just because of like how many elements are in there. Whereas if you have a T1.5 and a T1.5 35 and 50, the amount of light coming in is going to be similar. So it's going to be a lot easier to match shots first, because as you said, the color match, but also the amount of light coming in matches. And this is something kind of like underestimated when you first start off, because
honestly, it doesn't matter in the beginning too.
It doesn't matter.
You most of the time you don't have 6 cameras running at the same time.
Exactly.
The same lens.
But when you match, you have to match different cameras, different exposure to make sure that the ratios are good and stuff.
But honestly, that wouldn't. I don't think that would ever be a problem to me.
It does if you need to have really, really like specific ratios on like faces and stuff. If you shoot like multicam, for instance, and you have like, if you shoot like 3 cameras, one wide, one side, one medium, for instance, and you want to be able to cut between them without having to like readjust everything. Of course, you can do everything in post, but like on bigger productions,
exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I understand, but I don't think on my productions, smaller productions that we're used to, that's not an issue. I've never heard of anybody really having trouble with that. You're on a bigger thing, which everything counts and every.
I've had issues between like if you shoot wide, if you step down, I think like it evens out a little bit. It's more prominent when you shoot wide open, which I like to do for some reasons.
But how did it?
You can see like a clear difference in exposure between one lens and the other. That means that, again, in terms of efficiency on set, when you swap from like let's say you shoot like on a 35 and you want an 85, then you have to readjust the exposure when you swap lenses, which is just an addition. Like it's never been like a real problem. It's just like something you have to be aware of, and adds up a little bit of like
you can't just put it at F2 again or T2 and it's good.
Exactly.
Yeah, I see.
But but that's about it.
I guess I'm just used to that already. I know that I have to do that. I never.
Yeah. But I think like once you've used like cine lenses and like you're used to that, I think it's like a little bit more of a hassle to go back and use cinema lenses.
Because you get used to for sure.
The cool thing also, photo lenses and cine lenses, is that cine lenses, because they're more perfect in terms of like how they're built and like how they perform, are way more expensive than like vintage photo lenses.
That's the good thing?
No, that's the one thing.
I thought you said the good thing.
No, like, another thing we have to think about. Yeah. And so you can get like a set of like Leica R's for like the price of most likely one cine lens, basically, and it will give you more versatility to have like 6 lenses instead of like just one. So I think starting off with vintage lenses is like the way to go, and also the really small. So for like if you do like a lot of gimbal and you don't have Steadicam up, so like big movie operators, like it's a lot easier to like work with.
I don't think I'd recommend for people starting off using.
No, if you want like characteristic lenses.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
You will probably start with the kit lens or 24-70, like
24-70. It's funny how this is like a term.
Yeah.
How this just became. Like a full-on term. 24-70. It's just a standard lens.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
That's it. So 24-70 is a zoom lens. So this is a segue into like the other thing you have to think about.
Factor.
Prime lens versus the zoom lenses.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about like differences, which are obvious?
I mean, obviously the workflow is different. With a zoom lens, you just turn and it's at a 70, and then you turn back and it's at a 24, and you're really fast figuring out what lens, what focal length you want for a shot. Or maybe you're shooting documentary and you need to be very fast because there's no time to swap lenses and stuff. That's the obvious thing. But of course, there's other things that come with it.
The speed.
Speed is one thing. Mostly they have less speed, so they have a bigger f number or t-stop, where a primes might be 1.4, maybe a zoom will be 2.8 or even more. But most professional are probably at 2.82. But then also, since you have glass moving in the lens, most of the time they're less perfect or less sharp, for example, which you might not want, but it's a fact that they have like more problems with aberration and sharpness, because just they need to be perfect at any placement of the glass in the lens. Yeah. Whereas primes they're going to be staying the same.
They're a lot bigger too. They're a lot bigger.
The zooms,
yeah, that's
they're a lot bigger. Yeah, especially when you go to cine zooms. If you look at cine zooms,
you've shot a lot really with the Ingenieux, no? The easy.
Not a lot, but some. Yeah.
I've seen like a couple of projects you shot last year with like the Ingenieux. They're really nice.
They're really nice, and they have some vintage characteristics which I really like.
And they're not that big. They're not too big.
They're big, but they're okay. Yeah. There's much bigger lenses too. Yeah. But the problem is often with these small camera bodies, it's just a pain to kind of balance them.
Yeah, you need like.
So I always, when I get zoom lenses, I always get bigger batteries for the back.
You need like an 800 watt, just like a full-on generator on the back.
You
just
sit
like
your kid on the back of the camera and like, just
don't
sit
move,
there.
don't move.
Yeah, that's one thing. The size too. I was going to say something else, but I think I just forgot. Do you have something else?
Yeah, I mean, they're so versatile. Like shooting with prime lenses is really nice because, like as we said, it's sharper. You have faster like apertures, smaller. I think they look better in terms of like if you compare images, prime lenses will often look better. But just the convenience of having zooms, especially in like run and gun or like fast-paced environment, or if just for like aesthetic purposes, like you want to crash zoom or something, zoom lenses have their place. As we said, 24-70 is one of the most popular focal length for photo and for beginner videographers, just because you can cover essentially anything you want with this,
and really fast.
You
just, if you want to crop it, I mean, if you want to have another focal length, you just turn and keep the camera where it is.
You can go from like 24 to super wide to like.
I have a problem with zoom lenses though, and that's the main reason I don't really use them if I don't have to, because I only use them when I have to be fast on set and maybe don't have an assistant or just need to be fast.
For like advanced shit.
I haven't done events in a long
time. But when you do events, it's nice to have a zoom lenses. Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, I have a reason why I don't use it. And it's mainly because whenever I use zoom lenses, I don't really think about what focal length I'm shooting what at.
Exactly.
And I forget about it.
I get that.
I'm like, I don't think about, okay, where do I want to be in relation to the subject? Do I want to be further away with a longer lens, or closer on a wider, or closer on a longer lens? And when I'm in zoom mode, basically, I'm just kind of zooming in, but I don't really think about it. And once I review the footage, when it has to, usually I use zooms when it needs to be fast. You don't have a lot of time, you forget. And then I look at the footage and I'm like, why did I shoot it that way? Why didn't I go further away on that longer lens? Why did I, just zoom out? Because I don't like the look. And that only happens when I'm on zooms, because otherwise you have to think about it. Because you move the camera, you're like, okay, what lens, what focal length? And you're like, okay, of course, in best case scenario, you have done that in pre-production, but some projects just don't allow for that because you're maybe more versatile. You don't know the exact shots yet. And yeah, I oftentimes completely forget about focal length. I'm just, if
and you also have that. Yeah, for sure. Like I don't think about focal length,
and I hate when that happens.
I don't like it. But also, what I don't like is that I tend to overthink and overshoot, because, for instance,
you can just
you just swap to, okay, so it looks good on like a 50. Maybe this is 35 real quick. Let's do this real quick, and then
because you can.
Yeah, and I think especially if you work as like a DP, it's important to have like really like not strict but like distinctive like a good decision making process. You have to be clear on what you want. You have to know almost in advance what you want, and this is what makes the best looking images possible, and not just like playing around with like different focal lengths and stuff. I think it's nice.
There's other places for that.
There, yeah, exactly. So that's why I tend to shoot more primes.
I hate when that happens.
But zooms are definitely their place, and I've been thinking about getting a zoom lens as well, just for like the faster pace stuff, and also do like crash zooms and stuff because I kind of like them. But it's just when I use a zoom, and then let's say you use like a zoom, you shoot 35 on a zoom and then 50 and stuff, and then you use an actual 35 and an actual 50. I think it changes the way you approach, because as you said, instead of like zooming in and out, you just step in or step out, and it changes the perspective completely.
And you think about it. Do I want to step in with my 35 or
do you have to move this big ass tripod? And
And the one way I can get around that helps a bit. It doesn't put the problem away, but it helps a bit, is I at the beginning I would just zoom like to the place I need to, and I've been doing that for a while, but it's helped me. I would stick to the traditional sizes. I would never
Which
zoom. Okay, there's a lot of traditional sizes, but like, let's say 20, 24, 28 if you want, but I never use that. 35. And of course, there's 40, but traditional is 35, 50, 85, 100, 135, I think, or 25. 35. So that's a very classic. Of course, there's more, 100%, and they have all their space, 100%. But I try to just stay with these because I don't want to land on like a
63.5.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or like a 60. I'm not used to using them, so I don't want to land there. And if I look at my lens, which usually has indications for what focal length you're at, then I try to stick with them. And if I look at them already, it comes to my mind, bro, think about where you are and how far you're zoomed in or out, and decide what you want. And that really helps me than just, looking at the monitor, zooming in and landing somewhere and being, okay, that's good.
I get that.
That really helps me.
I get that. And it always weirds me out when I see like the exe files of like a photo, and I see like it was shot on a zoom and it's like I don't know, like 56.8.
That bothers you?
Yeah, it's like why? Like it makes me mad. It makes me mad for no reasons, but it's just like I don't like it.
You're not gonna see these 1.3 millimeters.
No.
But yeah.
No. So just stick to 50. So I think it's a good approach when you're shooting zoom, just to have like really.
Is there anything else that goes into deciding what lenses to
No,
use?
I think we mentioned it all. Like type of lens, spherical anamorphic, cine or non-cine, or cine modded, zoom, not zoom, vintage or clean. I think if you play around with enough different lenses, you go to rental, you could just do like half test days, or you have your friends rent it, like you rent them from your friends and stuff. Like you start to realize like different differences. Like,
but honestly, these days, it's crazy how much you can do in post.
Yeah.
And I think especially on on the bigger projects where you have money, all these lenses and all these things will still appear. But I'm very certain that it will die out for the regular projects and smaller projects.
Yeah.
Because just like the things we just mentioned, the things that vintage lenses or anamorphic lenses just bring with them, the trouble, it won't be worth it to do it on set for most projects.
Yeah.
For smaller projects where you don't have a lot of money, you don't have ACs, and which is the trend. Everything is getting smaller, everything is getting cheaper because we can, and because it's simpler and people don't want to spend unnecessary money. If it's not, a cinema blockbuster or something, I think most of the thing will just be in post. I just saw a video of a YouTuber that posted about a plugin for
Scatter.
DaVinci. I don't know the
Scatter.
name. Which you can put mist filters on. Is it Scatter? In post, and they have the classic mist filters that we know in post, and you can put them on your footage, adjust the amount, and 1,000 different things you can adjust, which you could never do when shooting. And basically, if you look at it, there's no point in doing this.
It looks pretty similar. I think it goes down, and I understand what you're saying. I don't agree with this necessarily, because I feel like more and more I work on project where I just like hand off the footage, and the more I can do in camera, the better I feel like. The better I the better I like, because I feel like when you hand off and the footage and you don't necessarily have like a say in the post-production process, most likely 7 times out of 10 they're gonna fuck up the footage by color grading badly or adding like effects or like weird stuff on top of it. So I feel like the more I can do in camera, if I don't handle post-production, the happier I am. And I think this might be a trend as well for like bigger cameras, because if you look at what Ari has done with like the X35, they integrated like the texture in there to essentially give back. So it's basically grain to basically give back the control to the cinematographer and not the post-production house. Nothing against post-production people, but I've seen so much of my footage being like messed up by like
I understand.
bad edits and stuff.
But I see that, and in terms of the cinematographer, of course you'd want that.
Yeah.
But in terms of, if you look at the whole production and just of the workflow, of course, if you have shitty people, they're gonna fuck up your footage no matter what. Even if you put some promise on it, they're just gonna grade it badly or whatever.
Yeah.
But as long as if you're good people, you know, if you have a good colorist, and maybe you even work together with him in the suite to decide how much promise or how much softness or grain you wanted that was mentioned, then it still doesn't make sense to do it on set.
But this would work
in the future. And
if there's if the budget allows it. If you have budget to really have a clear, in pre-production, have a clear vision of where you want to go in terms of like even grading or even like exposure, the levels or the look, that's great. If they have the budget to pay for a colorist and like 1 or 2 days or fewer time in post-production, I mean, that's great. That's probably the best, and I would give you the most flexibility in post, even if like sometimes all of a sudden I don't think like mist filters there would be good and stuff, like let's take it off, like okay, scatter off, turn off, that's it. But I feel like for projects where you don't, because like sometimes I'm getting hired by people I don't really work with often just because they saw some of the stuff I did and they're like, oh, can you come shoot this for us? They don't have any budget for me to grade or anything. And that's when I'm like, I feel like it's nicer to like do as much in camera as possible. Even in terms of like exposure, you want something to be moody, let's fucking do that in camera as much as possible. You want something really high key, let's do it in camera. So they won't have that flexibility, like this leeway in post production. But this is kind of selfish and like thinking about what I want to do me.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In the perspective of the cinematographer, 100%.
Yeah.
But in the perspective of the whole project and of the flexibility you have in post, it doesn't make sense. And I think it's gonna be.
Yeah, I think
of course people are still gonna use it, but it's gonna be the standard. Just using
that makes
that
sense
in post. Just
which is kind of sad, I think, because like I think
you have to choose good people to work with that you can trust and that you know they're gonna handle your footage well. But I think that problem you're always going to have, no matter what.
For everything. And
even if you use your promise on set.
Yeah, for sure. But it's just that
your grain in still.
I feel like nowadays, a lot of what the image look like is on post-production, which is great because flexibility and whatnot. But I kind of feel like it's also taking away from production budget and like transferring it to post-production budget. And
yeah, that's true.
Doing things in camera.
But it's just cheaper.
Yeah. But fixing it in post or like making it in post is never a good idea for me.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where it goes.
Very old. You're TikTok generation.
I'm slightly.
How old are you again? 27?
I'm turning 27 this year. Yeah.
So,
yeah. I'm becoming retro TV generation.
Yeah?
Yeah, I guess. I feel that way. No.
You see.
We'll see. You're good. Let's talk when. I was going to say when we're both 30. No, let's see when I'm 30 and this podcast is still going on.
What year were you born?
97.
7.
Yeah. Let's talk 2027.
Yeah, I'll be 65.
Retired.
I'll be retired by then.
Hey, nice one.
Nice one.
Au revoir.